Hi everyone, my name is Saoirse Madeira, and today I have a very special guest on my series. Special guest, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Temple Grandin. I am a professor of animal science at Colorado State University. I work in the animal welfare field, especially with cattle. And when I was a very young child, I had no speech until age 3, so I'm also autistic. And that's actually helped me in my work with animals because I'm an extreme visual thinker. Everything I think about is a picture. In fact, I talk about that in my new book, Visual Thinking, the hidden gifts of people who think in pictures, patterns, and abstractions.
I like the
And
cover.
oh, you like the cover? All right. You like that very much? Yeah, I
Yes.
think the artist did a good job on the cover. But the visual thinking helped me with animals because animals do not live in a word-based world.
Okay. So how are you today, Temple?
I'm fine.
Okay, so my first question is, when did you learn that you were autistic?
Well, I had severe speech delay. So I was in, a really good early educational program by 2.5 years old. Now I'm 76 years old. So at the time that I was taken to the doctor, they didn't know what autism was. So I was diagnosed as brain damaged. This is because I was back in 1949 when I would have been taken into the doctor. But fortunately, I was referred to a really good speech therapy school that was as good as anything they have today, with a really good teacher, just know how to work with kids that were nonverbal. And she taught me words. She also taught me how to wait and take turns at games, really, really important, and basic skills like dressing, brushing your teeth, those kinds of basic skills. And it wasn't until I got into the primary school that, then they started putting the autism label on it.
Or
But
elementary school as it's called there.
it's elementary school in the US and it's primary school in the UK. I was trying to use the UK term.
That's okay. That's okay. Yeah. So next question is to do with the first one. What was it like growing up in the 1940s when autism wasn't as understood as it is today?
Well, actually, it was the 1950s that I grew up.
Oh,
And by the time I got into primary school, I was fully verbal. Went to a very small primary school. And my mother worked really closely with the head teacher to make sure the rules were the same at home and school. And there were only 12 or 13 kids in the class. So everybody got invited to everybody's birthday party. So you didn't have a situation where I got left out. Also, in the 50s, kids played outside. Kids did all kinds of stuff outside. We had art classes, music classes, shop classes, cooking and sewing classes. And I loved them, shop, art, and sewing. And that's one of the things that really helped me to excel. So I had a really good childhood. High school was horrible. I had a terrible time in a large high school, bullied and teased. Worst part of my life. Got kicked out of a big high school after I heaved a book at a girl who called me a retard. And the only places I was not bullied was friends through shared interests. This is really important. The high school kids on the spectrum. I had friends riding horses, friends in the model rocket club that my science teacher ran, and friends in the lab where we did electronic circuits. Can't
well, it's good that
emphasize
you
enough.
had people who, well, it's good that you had people who were like you, who understood.
Well, and the thing is, they had a shared interest. I think it's very important to take things that the kid's interested in, and they can sometimes get very fixated. And when I was a little kid, I would draw the same horse head over and over again. And mother would encourage me to draw the whole horse, draw the saddle, draw the stable. Take that thing the child's interested in and broaden it. She encouraged me to use different kinds of art media. Broadening them. You have a kid that likes cars, read about them, do math with cars, learn about how cars are made. You can broaden that interest.
Well, it's very well, like as of late, I've been going to this autism befriending group, and I've actually met people who have similar interests to me. Like there's
Good.
like there's this one girl who like me had who like animated the same one of the same animated series I did.
Okay, good. Well, that's good. And I have shared interests now. I love talking about construction. I think that's a really interesting subject. I really like talking about animal behavior. I like talking about, what's the latest thunderstorm mess we've had at our airport. Those have been getting worse and worse and worse. And I've taken some pictures of some very weird looking clouds at the airport. I have fun showing those off.
I can see that you like time travel.
Yeah, well, I was a big Star Trek fan. Classic Star Trek. I loved Mr. Spock. Um, and I really liked the Next Generation too, Jean-Luc Picard and Data.
With
That
Patrick
was one of my
Stewart.
favorite shows.
How did you become interested in animals?
Well, first of all, for an interest in anything to develop, you have to get exposure. And I got exposed to the cattle industry as a teenager, not as a young child. If you're not exposed to something, how could you get interested? See, it's probably pretty likely that Michelangelo was autistic. Grubby little kid who dropped out of school at age 12. And he was exposed to great art being made that the churches were all commissioning. And then he made some stuff, and then he got apprenticed. So it starts off with exposure, then pulled into a studio and apprenticed and mentored. One of my mentors was my science teacher. He also ran the Model Rocket Club, and he got me motivated to study, because now there was a reason to study, to become a scientist.
Actually, can I actually say something? Like earlier when you were talking about school, I was going to say I actually really struggled in school, like secondary,
Yeah.
like because like of changes and stuff, and like how like the noise in the classroom and how things were in the classroom, and like it was just I found it really difficult, and my mom transferred me to a special needs school, and it it didn't exactly work out there, so she put and now I'm homeschooled.
And have you ever had a job?
Not really, no.
No, I had good work experience. Mother got me when I was 13 years old, a little sewing job with a seamstress that just worked out of her house during the summer. And then when I was in high school, they put me to work cleaning horse stalls and managing a horse barn. Uh, one of the things I'm seeing now, especially with the fully verbal autistics, where there's no speech delay, is grandparents come up to me all the time, and they discover they're autistic when the kids get diagnosed. But that grandparent learned working skills as a young person. I think they had paper routes. Now I realize that no longer exists. I'm fully aware of that. But one of the things that people on the spectrum need to learn is how to do a task for somebody outside the family. Like I'll suggest to families, like maybe 11-year-old, 12-year-old child, you walk the next door neighbor's dog. It's somebody else's dog. It's Mr. Jones's dog. And you have to go over there every day at 7 o'clock and walk that dog for 20 minutes. It's a job.
Yes.
And that's a skill that's very different than, than academics. Volunteer jobs at community centers, at churches. I talked to a teenager the other day, and she's very proud of the fact that she's the coffee lady at their church. She's in charge each week of getting the coffee, getting it all put out really nice, the cookies and the coffee, and she's in charge of that. You see, that's an important job skill, and that costs nothing to set up in the community.
What was it like going to boarding school as well as college?
Well, it was difficult being away from home. That was hard. Now, one of the things that was good about it is then going to college and being away from home was less of an issue. And I still had bullying in college. I had a terrible time with abstract math, and algebra. I just didn't understand it as a visual thinker. Now, when I failed my first math quiz, I went and got help from the teacher. Big mistake a lot of students make is when they fail their first quiz in a course, any course, they don't ask for help. I got tutoring right away. In fact, it was a small college, and the teacher, Norb Dion, tutored me in his office twice a week and managed to get me through the math class. You've got to ask for help right away before you fail the course. I had to be tutored in every math class. I had a graduate student tutor me for my master's in statistics. I barely got through it.
How did you come up with the idea for the hug box or the squeeze machine?
Well, I got the idea from a cattle chute out on a ranch. It's a device for holding cattle for vaccinations. It works exactly like the squeeze machine, except it's not padded. And I went and tried out the cattle chute at a ranch, and that's where I got the idea from.
Are you able to describe thinking in pictures?
Yes, it's like I'm going through a bunch of PowerPoint slides, and the pictures come up. Why don't you give me some key words and I'll just tell you how I think in pictures. It's also associative. So give me a keyword, not something boring like house, dog, or car. Think up a creative keyword, something that would not be where I could see it where I'm at right now. And then I'll tell you how I think in pictures.
I'm allowed to say rocket?
A what?
Rocket.
A rocket? Well, I've got a picture right here of a rocket, one of the SpaceX's rockets taking off. Now I'm seeing them, getting all kinds of pictures from the Mercury space program, astronauts. Now I'm seeing something that's kind of associated. When I was a child, we had these little radios called rocket radios, and they were shaped like a rocket. And if you clip these two little wires to the drain pipe at the school, it was a little crystal set, you could listen on it. Okay, now this is how I got from a rocket that takes off into space, and then some pictures of the Mercury capsule to a little radio that was shaped like a rocket. And now I'm into, like kind of electronic things. And I was fascinated a few weeks ago with a 1915 Edison record player. We actually got to play it. It actually worked. It has no electronics in it. It actually works quite well. It's not electronic, but it's an audio device. Okay, now you see how there's an association there? I got from like SpaceX rocket, which is a picture of one right here where I can see it. So obviously that came up first. And then I was saying the Mercury space capsule. And then all of a sudden I got a picture of this little plastic rocket radio. They were about this long, had a little antenna, a little thing you could slide in and out for the station. And a little tiny earphone. And you could listen to different things on that. And now that gets me into the file of audio devices. Now I'm seeing a picture of this 1915 Edison record player that's totally non-electronic. Because I just thought I was amazed at how well it worked. And it was strictly a mechanical device.
What made you decide to start giving talks about autism awareness and animal welfare and writing books about autism?
Well, my very first book, Emergent Labeled Autistic, I was approached by the publisher. That's how that got started. And then my very first livestock book, textbook, again, I was approached by the publisher. And then Thinking in Pictures in the mid-90s, Oliver Sacks had written an article about me in the New Yorker, and a booking agent approached me. And then after that, I was established as an author, and then we would just, make proposals and send them out around to the book publishers. You never know where somebody can open the door. My very first journal article, I had a professor that invited me to do it. This is the thing, is you never know where you might find a door to opportunity. And then when I jumped on it.
I agree with that. So I guess like when I decided to start doing interviews, it's kind of like I opened the door to an opportunity.
That's right. And then usually what happens is you have, as you start to build up your audience, you might have parents, teachers, adult advocates, different, segments of the autism population. Man, back when I first started, my very first talks were in the 70s. And I was just invited to do a talk at local autism societies. And then there was a company called Continuing Education Programs of America that mainly did seminars for occupational therapists. I was doing some of those in the 80s. And then people see me, and then I get invited to a state autism association. The same thing happened with cattle talks. I can remember when I got invited to my very first cattle talk, the Ensmingers Stockman School, big international convention. Boy, I jumped right on that. I made sure I really did a good job.
I'm okay. I have at least two questions for you, like both are linked to this. What do you think of the movie about your life, and what did you think of Claire Danes' performance?
Well, I really liked the fact that the movie showed my visual thinking really accurately. I think that's important. It showed how I think. And Claire Danes sort of became me. When I first watched the movie, it was in HBO's corporate office. It was like going in a weird time machine back to the 60s and the 70s. She became me. And then I remember a interview on the radio station where they had me talking on it, and then Claire Danes would be talking in the movie, and it almost mixed us up. Listening to my actual talk on a movie and then listening to Claire Danes.
What do you like to do in your spare time?
Well, I like to go to movies. I went out and saw the Oppenheimer movie yesterday. It's very long, but it's very, very good.
I actually struggle with going to movies. Like I tried once with an animated movie, but then we left like during like the adverts.
Why did you leave?
Well, I think it was because I struggle a bit with because I'm very like aware of what's going on around me and like how, and I think it was also that the movie was quite loud. And
yeah, they're really loud. And what some theaters are doing are some sensory friendly shows where they tone down the loudness.
Relaxed performances.
Or you can watch it on a streaming service and you can turn the sound down.
Yes, of course. Can I also ask you something? Like it's not on my sheet, but I want to ask you this. How did you find it during lockdown?
One of the things, it wasn't easy. In fact, this book, Visual Thinking, was the big lockdown project. And then I called up my agent, Betsy Lerner, and she's my co-author on this. She had nothing to do too. And I said, let's do a book, because we both had not much to do. And it was bad. I was doing things like our meats lab still kept running, so I was going over there every Wednesday just to have something to do. But then we got working on the book, and I'm very concerned that visual thinkers like me, we have a lot of problems with math. We're getting screened out. There's actually three kinds of thinking. There's visual thinking like me, as it's shown in the movie, but then you also have autistic people that are extreme math thinkers. They're pattern thinkers. I talked to one just the other day, and I said, when you think about the apple and fruit display at the supermarket, I just see the apples stacked there. Whole Foods has them like in pyramids. In the other market, they're just kind of rolling around on this wooden table thing. And this student was seeing like geometric formulas for stacking apples. He was a complete mathematics person. Then you have the verbal thinkers. And then you have the mixtures. And autistic people can be any one of those three, but they tend to be an extreme version of it. And this book is about different kinds of thinking. A lot of it's aimed at business leaders, that we need the skills of these diverse minds. Visual thinkers like me are very good at understanding mechanical devices, fixing them, inventing them, building them. And I tell them that the first thing you have to realize, the different kinds of thinking exist. So during the lockdown, I worked on this.
Well, it was good it was good for you to have something to do. And also, Temple, you've now convinced me to try and buy that book.
Yep, I think you're going to like this book. The other thing I found that helped during the lockdown is I took some advice from the space station. And when space stations first started, they didn't have a set schedule, and they gave the astronauts too much work. And both on the US space station, the very early one, Skylab, the real old one, and an old Russian space station, the astronauts got mad and turned off mission control. And so what was learned from this, and all is having a schedule. You get up at a certain time, you get ready for work, you do your work in the morning, then there's a lunch time, they call it a midday meal, where all the people on the space station get together and float around a table where they eat. They all have to be there. And then there's time off, then there's exercise time. They have to do a lot of exercise for their health. And then there's time off where they can read books, play games with a satellite phone that they have, just whatever they want to do. But they found that the schedule really helped. And so one of the things that helped me during the lockdown is every morning I got up and I took a shower and I got dressed for work. I did
Like
not
a
lay
routine.
around in pajamas. I found that getting up, taking a shower, getting dressed for work really helped.
And can I also say, like during COVID, it was lockdown was a really difficult time for me. Like I got very depressed, and I would spend like almost the entire time in bed, the entire day in bed. But
Well,
then
I found what I had to do is make myself get up the regular time, get dressed for work. And then the book project started maybe 2 months into COVID. And I realized that this was going to drag on. This wasn't going to get over with in just a few weeks. I think it was like COVID for us started the middle of March, 2020.
or around the start, like January or something.
Well, for us, a lockdown started the middle of March. I'll never forget the faculty meeting where they shut down the university and we had 10 days to get our classes online. That was just awful. And I remember that meeting really well. And then we did have a quarantine group where we had lunch outside. I'd have lunch once a week with my students in the gazebo.
Yeah, a tent. Like a tent.
No, completely open.
Oh, sorry. When you said gazebo.
Open.
Oh, sorry.
The gazebo is a wooden structure that's got benches in it, and it's at my apartment complex.
Sorry, I got a bit mixed up.
It's completely open with a shade. And we would have lunch in that takeout lunch once a week with my students.
We have a gazebo outside our house.
Yeah, well, we did. This was all outside. We didn't do it. They didn't come inside the everything was done outside.
Yes.
And then about a couple of months or 6 weeks into COVID, for me it lasted an entire year. I called up Betsy and I said, let's do a book. And then I wrote the rough drafts and Betsy wrote she would revise them. My writing's kind of associative. It kind of wanders around all over the place. But Betsy would smooth it all out, straighten it out, and then add stuff to it. Well, Betsy and I were totally different in how we think.
Yeah.
But we used the different skills in a complementary manner. That's really important.
And also, like, when I was going through it, well, can I tell you how I actually got out of that depression and everything?
How did you get out of it?
Well, through cooking. I started watching this British cooking show called Great British Menu that's on the BBC, and like I started cooking and I really found that I really enjoyed it, and I even did some fundraising that year for this charity, Children in Need, and I did a sponsored walk for the Birmingham Children's Hospital.
Good. So you got doing some things. You see, that really helped with me, was having this big book project, and I spent hours online looking up scientific studies for it. That was and Betsy was at her New York office, book agent office was closed, and so she was just at home locked down, and she still had some book clients to work with. She didn't have much to do, and so we worked on the book together, and we got the manuscript pretty well finished when our lockdown stopped a year later.
And I was also featured on BBC News, like about my fundraising.
Okay, good. Well, that's good that you did that.
Did I say that I did?
I think that getting up in the morning and getting dressed for work was important, because what they learned with the astronauts was they had to put them on a schedule, get them up in the morning, and then the morning had to be Houston time. They had to decide, whose time to be, and then do their work, their scientific work in the morning when they're fresh. Then there was lunchtime. Everybody has to go float around the table and have lunch. And they would, there's different nationalities on there, and they had a lot of fun with making concoctions of different food from the, different countries' food stores. And then in the afternoon, they had to exercise. They had to exercise really hard for an hour every day because weightlessness is really bad for your health. And then they had time off. This was one of the mistakes that was made in the beginning, is they didn't give them any time off. And on 2 different space stations, the crews revolted and shut off mission control, said they had just had enough. And then having this schedule, and then Scott Kelly has spent an entire year up there. He found a schedule that saved him. You get up, you do your scientific work, you have lunch, you exercise really hard for an hour or so, and then you have time off. And the other meals were not scheduled.
And when you're not actually doing that schedule and it becomes more difficult to do this particular thing.
They found the schedule was and I found for me, we had then I had things like Tuesdays we had lunch at the gazebo, then we had another quarantine group that I would go to where we ate outside at picnic tables and spaced out. And so I had like 3 different places in a week I'd have lunch. The meats lab was open, so I'd go over there on Wednesday mornings to have something to do and stay away from everybody. Our experiment station was somewhat operating. I'd go out there. And I finally got these things kind of on a schedule.
And Temple, can I tell you something? I started thanks to I was doing taking walks more regularly thanks to my challenge and my sponsored walk. But as of late, I haven't really been doing that. I've just been staying at home and it's sort of made going out a bit more difficult. But now, now that after talking to you, feel like I want to start doing those things again.
Well, I did walks every day around the neighborhood, every day. And then I got to know some of the people around the neighborhood, and we'd visit socially distanced outside. There was some repair construction going on in our apartment complex, so I'd go watch that. So at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I'd do my walk around the neighborhood. These things helped. I mean, boy, as soon as I got vaccinated, when I got my second shot, I was jumping up and down in the hospital parking lot going, freedom, freedom. I'm booking a plane ticket for 3 weeks later. I booked a plane ticket that afternoon. I was jumping up and down. It's because I was 73 at the time. And seniors, it was killing seniors. Oh, I wanted those vaccines so bad. And as soon as I got my second shot, I was just jumping up down the hospital parking lot going, freedom, freedom.
Let me think, what was it again? Well, until I think of the other thing, can I at least tell you something? Do you remember that document do you remember working on the documentary A is for Autism?
Yes, I do remember that. That was a really cute, really good show. Yep, I remember.
Well, I interviewed the director, Tim Webb, yesterday. And I think he said to say hi to you.
Okay, well, good. Yep, I remember that show really well.
And okay, I just remember the other thing, okay, so, well, do you find it when you haven't been doing your regular routine that it's difficult to actually do the thing that you've been doing if you haven't been doing it?
Well, I have a routine. Okay, right now we're on a 3-day holiday weekend right now, and then I have the routine of classes, and then then I got speaking engagements, and so I like to get to the airport early because I have my stuff I do there, I get my shoes shined, go eat at this particular restaurant, and my things I do at the airport before the flight. And I like lots of time at the airport.
So
I
what?
absolutely hate being in the security line and it's like 20 minutes before they're going to board the flight, and then I get worried about missing the flight. So I like to get there good and early and have enough time that if they have a traffic tie up out on the highway, I'll still make the flight.
So, but have you ever like been out of routine and like it was difficult for you to like get back into the thing you were doing, your routine?
Well, you have to just do it. I mean, one of the things, though, I gave a lot of talks during COVID lockdown, and I talked about the space station. I actually looked up the official space station schedule, and they make them get up in the morning, Houston time.
Yes.
They play their favorite music to them. But one of the big things on the schedule was the midday meal. They work in the morning, all their scientific stuff. Midday meal, everybody's going to go float around that table because they want everybody in that station at lunch. They don't want them like factions holding up in different parts of the space station, staying away from each other. Everybody's going to eat lunch together. They call it the midday meal. The
And
other meals were not scheduled, but lunch was.
and it's important to do those things even if you're feeling tired. You just have to like do it.
You have to just do it, and you've got to get up and you've got to get dressed.
Yes.
You see, that's one of the things they made them do. And then they get their science work, and then they have to exercise. And they have to exercise hard. And then they have time. They have some musical instruments up there, and they have time to. They brought some books up. They're allowed to get a certain amount of personal stuff on the supply ship, and they have DVDs for movies. Streaming doesn't work up there. I think they're still using DVDs. So they have lots of DVDs of the latest movies they can watch, and that's in their time off. They'd have a video phone now. They didn't originally, they just had audio phone. So they call home. Their internet coverage is pretty bad because as the space station goes around, it has blackout periods where they're sick. They just, even mission control can't get a signal. I've actually been to mission control for the space station. And when I walked into mission control, nobody was there. And I said, why is nobody at mission control? Well, there's like an 8-minute blackout where there's no signal. Everybody had gone to the bathroom.
And Temple.
Because during that 8 minutes, there's no signal. So even if something went wrong, I wouldn't be able to know about it because it's sort of like bad cell coverage on certain roads, and they know exactly when the space station goes to no signal.
Temple.
And they run out and take breaks.
Can I say one more thing before we say goodbye?
Okay.
Well, I've actually been writing my own books.
Okay.
Like about fundraising, and one of the books I wrote is about what would make an autism-friendly school.
All right. What would make an autism-friendly school?
Well, I don't really remember like what I put, but it's like teachers being more teachers understanding and having a place to go, and like when you're feeling like overwhelmed.
Yeah, you have a place to do sensory breaks. Yep, I would agree with that. The other thing is some people can see flicker on LED lights. I tell architects, make sure we get LED lights that don't flicker. You need to test them with your phone, take pictures of them in slow motion video, and you can find the bad phones. I want to do some sound, deadening materials so we don't have so much echo and racket. Those are some things that do.
Well, it was good to talk to you today, Temple. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you have a great rest of the day. Bye.